So, how would you start that, Ginger, from what you know? I know it's limited. How would you, what do we got to make? We got to make a family, right? So we're just going to go to a new family. And then we get this terrible question of which one of these guys do we want to make? And I'm going to tell you, it's always a good idea to start with the generic model if you're building a 3D object. Okay? As soon as that guy comes up, it's really a good idea if we type in WT. Oh, that's nice. So that we get the 4 different views. Okay, you see how I have a reference level? This is the floor plan. This is the front. This is the left. And this is my 3D view. So what then I'm going to do is I'm going to take, and if I check my reference level, those green lines are called reference planes, and those determine where something's going to come in at. So if the reference plane has an origin in 2 directions so that they cross each other, it knows that where they cross, and you can only have one, you don't only have two, you can actually have 3 reference planes be origins. See, because we would find the one down here is probably an origin as well. See how it says defines origin? All right. So that's where the pick point is going to be right in the center of the object, depending on where I set my object on here. So at this point, what I typically do, and I'm going to show you just real quick, is I'm going to take these 3 views, and I'm going to capture their images, and then I'm going to lay them in there. Okay. So I'm just going to be using a screen capture snipping tool. You've probably used that before. Yes. Have you ever used that one? We'll assume yes is the answer. It's this guy. And then you go new, and then I'm going to capture this image. Let's see. And then I'm going to save this image somewhere where I can work on it. I'm going to do it right in the Century. I generally save these as JPEGs, and then I would name this guy. And I might name him top and which fan number it is, but I'm just going to call it fan 1 or hood 1, whatever you wanted to call it. It's only a temporary usage. So the idea is then once that's created, I could now go find that image right here. It's this top fan 1. And I just drag it and drop it in the view that I want it to be in. Yeah, why not? Why did it not do that? Is it because it's too big? Doesn't look too big. There it is. There it is. Okay, so once he comes in, this is where I was telling you those green marks, those green reference planes. What I would personally do is probably line that up against the back of the wall, centered in the 2. And we'll get that more accurate in a second because you don't want to go adjusting that, because what we want to do is find the largest number that there's a dimension on. See this 336? And we come down here to the scale button, or up here to the scale button. We pick this end of that dimension, and then we pick the other end of that dimension as close as you can. And then you type in 336, and we'd have to include the inch mark. And that would be the size that unit's actually going to be. And I'm just sort of nudging that guy up into place. Now, what's a good idea to do is if your piece of equipment, if your piece of equipment has these dimensions, this 167, is really a good idea for us to put some reference planes in here. Now, reference planes, like I said, they have this origin right here. Well, they also have whether they're the center or the left or the right. So it really would be nice if when you're creating this, now in the beginning, it's just going to take you a little time to do this. So I understand you usually will skip this step, but if we came down here and drew one on that side and one on this side, and you could even be so bold as to name them right here. So this would be the left side. You know what? I named that backwards, didn't I? This would be the right side. And this would be the left side. Now, since we know that it's 167, we could actually come in here and put these dimensions in. Now, I want you to see these dimensions. It's not actually too bad. It's close to the same scale. See how this text is smaller? If we're trying to get it to the same scale so that we can read it, if that's a quarter, it's probably up there at or 3/4. Nope, opposite way. That's pretty close. It's probably 3/8 scale. But the idea is if we now pick on that reference plane, we could type in that 167 inches, okay, which is 13'11". Well, instead of us keep playing with that, if the submittals in decimal inches, what you want to do is you want to go to manage, and you want to go to additional settings, no, units, right here, project units. Right there, project units. And then what we would do is we would say for length, we want to work in decimal inches. It looks like they give us about one place. Maybe we'll say two places. Let's see what happens now. As you'll see, those go to 167. So this one here, when I pick on the reference plane, the dimension turns blue and I could type in 167. All right. So you can see that sort of the sides of that thing. We named it left and right. So it would probably be a good idea to change this guy's name from center front back to instead just being named back. Last time when I named it, I did this. I picked on here and picked the blue. Understand that I can also pick it over here in the parameters and do the same thing. And then for the reference, I could say this is the back of the unit, which means it would probably be a good idea for me to create one last reference plane, which is out here, which is going to be the front of the unit. Okay. So now if I dimension from the back to the front, look at that. It actually accidentally hit the right number because I was zoomed out far enough so it knew to snap to every even inch. So by zooming in and trying to draw things accurate, it sometimes makes it slower for you. I'm going to go ahead and blow this up to full screen so you even have a better picture of it so everyone else can see it a little bit better. All right, so if the next thing we would want to do is find out some height information. And if you remember that thing that I had before, we had a beautiful little picture. So I'm going to do a new, and I'm going to grab this guy here. Right? That's the side view. Then we would know how high this thing is going to go. So we're going to save him. Oh, wrong button. Save. JPEG. And you never get these right, whether it's the right side or the left side, but you'll know when it comes in. So if we now come here, see what happens is they've given us the left side view. I actually want the right side view to stick that image in. So I'd come over here and I see my elevations. Oh, it doesn't want to do that. I'd pick on that right And now I'm in the right side view. Now, if we're right, that means this is the front and this is the back. So when I drop that image in, let's see, century, we drop the right side in right here to this spot. Drop. Nope, it's being mean to me. Century. Scoot this over, right side. Now it's in there. So let's look at our naming, and you see how my naming helps. See how that's the back of the unit, and this is the front of the unit. So I told you to get the biggest dimension, right? There's my 132. And what you'd find is last time I had to type in 132 with the inch mark, but because I changed my units this time, I'm pretty sure I can just guess 132. 132. And sure enough, so now if we line that back up, now this is a perfect example. Oh, no, actually, you know what? I was going to say this thing was out of scale, but you can see my front is lined up pretty much where my front is supposed to be. So, ironically, this is where you end up. It takes you a while, but you have to figure out which one of the objects do I want to create. Misty, if you can unmute and tell me, do you think we should do an extrusion, a blend, a revolve, a sweep, or a swept blend? Did you leave? You may have abandoned me.
Who are you talking to?
I wanted to know, what do you think I should do? An extrusion, a blend, a revolve, a sweep?
For which one? I'm sorry, it's working.
Oh, you were working. That's why you was ignoring
I'm
me.
sorry, that lot of noise.
Well, I guess the truth of the matter is, before we start drawing, we should finish putting in our reference planes. So you'll see now that I'm actually in this view, I really should put a reference plane right here, right? And that would be named top. And since we know what that dimension is, we could dimension from there. I do not recommend dimensioning to that level line. I'm going to use the tab and get that reference plane behind there. That causes people problems. So now I could pick on this guy, this dimension, and say 132. And the reason, Ginger, that we put all of these reference planes in is it sort of is like the bones that the next thing, the object we extrude, will sort of stick to. So you really could put one down here at the bottom. And I think I'm going to. So if we put a reference plane right there, we would know this should be equal to 30 plus 18, 48. And it looked like that landed in the right spot. So now the idea is, if we draw the shape of this exhaust hood, and I'm assuming, Ginger, you know what these exhaust hoods look like. Would that be a safe assumption?
Yes.
So what it really is this weird shape right here. And then it's got an end cap on it. So that's exactly the shape that I'm going to try to draw. So I'm just going to go into create and do an extrusion. See, this snap point right here is hitting those two reference planes, which means if I go back and move those reference planes, that line's going to move because it, like I said, it's acting like a bone. So if I just draw this shape real simple, right around. Oh, I lied to you. Let me fix this. This one comes up here. Then it comes back to here. Then they probably have an angle on the back of that hood. And then up and closed. And if we said finish, we'd have something that looked like that. Now, this would actually go. Oh, did I? How did I do that? Oh, this is a tough one. Misty, I could really use your help because this is going to be one that jams up a lot of even experienced users. Why does this look like? Why does this look like in plan? Why doesn't it go out to this? Oh no, that's in the top view. Oh, why don't we see it in plan view? Is I guess what the real question is. See what
You have to
happens.
do the OCP version. It's too high.
That's a good see. That's why I wanted to ask you, because the RCP method, it would be a good method. But what I think a lot of people don't know
I forget.
is
Yeah, you can do it.
how to change that cut plane. So if I'm in this view here, this is my reference level. If I come to reference level and I set the cut plane view range to be higher than 9 feet or 10 feet or 12 feet, I'm going to go 12 feet and I'm going to go to the top, overall top to be 16 feet. That object should now appear. So do you see how I changed that? Because a lot of people,
view.
So I can see it in my plan view is what I was trying to do.
Cool. Yeah, I'll do that. Because I don't do that yet right now. I don't mess with the cut plane in the families.
Yes, and it's a good idea because sometimes the reflected ceiling plan trick isn't going to do it for you.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when I did that stretch, one of the things that you'd want to keep in mind, Ginger, is it did not stick to that reference plane unless when I do the stretch and hit it, I hit this little lock symbol. So this stretch should have looked like this and hit that stop symbol. Okay.
I see.
Now what happens is if I was to move this green line, you see it would grow because we're going to be making this thing very parametric so that we can use this one sample. I'm going to shoot you an email and shoot Tyler an email so that you guys can give it a try on your own and see if you can't build one of the other ones that are in the submittal. That's why I emailed you the submittals. Does that make sense? So the one piece of the hood that we did not build is, and hopefully this will be a good lesson for even you, Misty, is if I made an extrusion out here at the end, it's this end plate that sort of closes the end of the unit. So if I say finish, okay, so the first problem I have is this is only like probably 1/8 of an inch. I'd always recommend never drawing anything as thin as 1/8 of an inch. So I'm drawing it 1/4 of an inch. Okay, it's just this thin piece at the end. Now, the trick is a lot of people will then try to move that. Maybe they'll look at it in this front view. They'll say, oh, it's right here. And they want to move it over to here. Well, what you can do is you can actually take this guy and say, change its work plane. And instead of being on the center left, right, we can put it on the left. And that's going to stick it down at the other end. Okay. More importantly, it's going to keep it linked to this green line so that when I move it, you can see this hood will change sizes. Now, if I then take and copy that 0 inches, so it's right on top of itself, and go instantly into the edit work plane and put the one on the other end on the right side, you'll see that we now got those end caps for those two pieces. Okay.
Cool.
Pretty neat, huh?
Oh, yeah.
Now, the top piece up here, I want to basically do a cutting object to remove, because up top, we should actually be able to see where these ducts connect into. So they would tell you in class that what you can do is you can build a void form. I don't recommend that, because what happens with the void form is it'll sometimes join to things you don't want to. So I always build things as solids. I'm just going to do an extrusion. I'm just going to rough ballpark this. Once it's an extrusion, then what I do is I come over here and change it to a void. See, then you'll see it didn't actually join with the other one. Then I use this cut command, and I cut the one object with the other. And then all I'm left doing is trying to get this down to that end and down to this end. So you see what I'm looking at?
Looks good.
So all we really have to do is now make a duct connection and make lights for that guy. And typically what people would do is they would do an extrusion of this shape and try to get these dimensions nailed down. But I'm thinking that we might have an easier time if we make a new family. And I'm going to go teach you another one. I told you I usually want you to use a generic model, but I'm actually going to use a generic model face-based. Okay? So what that does is, I know I don't need very much for that shape. So I'm going to do an extrusion. I'm going to do a polygon with 4 sides. That allows me to draw like this, and it's going to give me a perfectly good square. It'd probably be a good idea, like we did in the last one, if we changed our units to decimal inches. And remember, that's always going to be depending on what the vendor's drawing is providing. But what we're going to do is we're going to say from here to here, these are equal. From here to here, then we're going to go from here to here is equal. And from there to there is the overall. And we're going to name this guy a parameter, create a parameter. And we're going to call that the width. I think I'm going to do that as an instance. And then I'm going to make this one be the depth. And we'll make that be an instance as well. And then we're going to finish him. Now, if I looked at that in 3D, it's just this little square. But what happens is I can now look at mine, and mine, there's one that's a 12 by 20. See, I can go 12 by 20. See, that box is going to fix its size. So we're going to be able to adjust to whatever size ducts that we've got. Now we can put this object in on top of our hood, and then we'll be able to adjust the duct sizes. Okay, so the only other thing that I don't know, it looks like that thing might come up there maybe 4 inches. They don't really tell you how far that duct extension is, but I'm guessing it's probably either 3 or 4 inches. So I'm going to say 4 inches. That's where we're going to put our duct connection to. So if we now take and load this back into that project that we had a second ago, you would see that I can come in and it's trying to place that duct connection on the top face. So if I rotate that with a space bar, you'll see it's sitting sideways. So what we've actually got is We've got 3 connections up here. 1, 2, 3. And then we've got 1 connection in the back. So if we now look at our sizes in the back, they're 12 by 20. And there's actually 2 of them. So let me place 1 more. Create similar. You remember how I said I hit the space bar? If you've placed it in already, I think if you hit the space bar, it'll rotate them. So what we can now see is, did they give us any dimension to where this is? I think what they did was they did it to the center. So that would be telling us from here to there is going to be equal. See how that landed it right in the spot? And from here to there is going to then be equal. So we got them in the right direction in that way, in that methodology. Once again, I don't see them really dimensioning where that set. Oh, right there it is, 8 inches. 8 inches with a 3-inch airspace. So we probably need another one of those reference planes out here at 3 inches. You'll see when I pick on that right there, it made it 2. So we'll make it 3. So what actually ends up happening is we want a dimension from here to the center line. We pick the object that turns the dimension blue, and now we could make that 8 inches. We can do the same thing with the one at the other end. Dimension. And make that 8 inches. So those back 2 are in the right spot, and they're the right size. Let me check, make sure we made these 12 by 20. See how they're 12 by 20? So what are they in the front? 12 by 30 in the front. And we don't have anywhere near enough of them, do we? Because we actually have 3 and 3. So to do that, what I'd probably do, I'd probably take and create a reference plane for my start offset and my end offset. So if I put my dimensions on there, is there a reference plane? There it is. That one's supposed to be 28, and this one's supposed to be 28. So we pick that, we say 28. We pick this one, we say 28. So now what happens is you take and you use the align command and you align that to the center and lock it. You align this one to the center and lock it. To get the middle one to stay in the middle, I'd probably dimension, come out here and say equal. Okay. So then the last thing we've got to do is get this center line, which says 7 foot or 7 inches. We created a reference plane right down the center. We can dimension that and say if that's 7 inches. Which means that now, if we use the align command, try that again, do that and lock it. Nope. I don't know why I did a dimension. I apologize. Must be too late. If we align that to that and lock it, align this one to this one and lock it. Align this one to this one and lock it. See, this what happens is then if there's a different offset in one of the other units, then what happens is I can move just this guy and all three of them move together, if that makes sense to you. That's why we spend that time joining them together. Now, we said that these guys are 30 by 12. I picked them all at the same time, and then I could just type in 30, and now they're all 30 by 12. Okay? So really, you can then take 1, 2, and 3, and we can mirror those around to the other side. Okay? I think you could even mirror these guys. These little reference planes, notice that by default they came in as a weak reference because they're not real important to me. The important ones are the left, the right, the front, the back. Oop, I picked the align command. All right. So we actually have all of our duct connections at this point. You could really use this hood like this and stick it in the project. It would really be ready to go, except for what do we need to add last, Misty? Do you remember?
Duct connections.
Duct connections. Exactly. So we're going to go up here to create. We're going to add these duct connectors. We pick it on the top. Nope, not that one. That one. And that one. So I guess it would be beneficial to see how they work in the project. So what happens is the exhaust side is on the back side, and my exhaust system is an exhaust air. So that's what we want those to be, exhaust. The ones on the front side are makeup air, and that's considered return air. The reason I'm going through that naming is because if I want those orange things to connect to these duct connectors, they have to be this system classification. So we got exhaust air and return air. So these back two guys, right here where it says supply air, we need to make that say those are exhaust air. And the ones in the front, they would need to be return air. Now, all of this is automatically going to be in there with the one that I email you. So all you're going to have to do is basically get rid of these guys. However, we're going to sort of try to relate that duct connection to this guy here. Okay. So when we pick this guy here, okay, good. So we're going to make this. Okay, what I did here, I want to show you this. Where the width value was, where we were able to pick it and put in 30 inches. What we're going to do is we're going to call this makeup width. And we're going to call the other one makeup depth. So if we relate this connector, you'll see right here, see the height and the width. Let's see if we make this the makeup width. I'm just guessing it's going to be one or the other. Right on the money. So then the width was the makeup depth. Good. So now what we have to do is set all of those to that way. And I'm going to show you what the hard work that we've done, how it's going to pay off. So we're going to call this width, goes to the makeup air width. This depth goes to the makeup air depth. And all of these guys. And we said that this one here is the makeup air depth. And this one here is the makeup air width. And the whole thing that we just did is now. Oh, well, last thing I didn't fix, let me fix it real quick, is all of these have to be return air. They are return air.
Is there a reason why you just couldn't put all the duct connections global? That's what I do. I never choose my system because sometimes I don't know what my system is.
It really benefits you by, you can do global, but then you can't really test your flows.
Oh, do you test your flows?
No, I don't.
Okay.
So touche. Good question. I just haven't had luck with doing them all as global.
But you know what? The only problem I have, and I know once you connect two different systems into one object, you're not sure what color you're going to get. Maybe gray, maybe that one system color.
You
Maybe
should
the
get,
other
no, you
color.
should get gray. Whenever you connect two systems in, you should get gray.
Okay.
So these guys here, we changed both of these to exhaust, but we need that size. So this is the exhaust depth, I think. Yep. And this is the exhaust width. Which means now we got to take these two guys and make this one go. I guess we could try them both. What does it say? Width is the exhaust depth. This one should be the exhaust width. Now, all the hard work that we've just done allows us to say, if we come to the properties of this family, we can adjust the exhaust size. So when I get to the next family, if it's not a 12 by 20, but a 6 by 36, you would see that those ones in the back changed automatically. You can actually see the one that I missed, which was this guy. Exhaust depth and exhaust width. But the idea is now you could read that submittal and say, oh, these are the connection sizes I need. Then the only thing you'd have to do is verify their locations. And the idea is if you make it parametric, then you don't have to do as much work with the next one. That's why I wanted to make this guy, save it, and send it to you and let you try to make one of the other exhaust fans or exhaust hoods. Does that sound like something you're interested in, Ginger? Did I lose you? If I lost you, I'll just email you. If you had to walk away, we're going to email you this. But the idea is you can go back and watch the video and try to replicate this process. You think there's anything I'm missing, Misty? Think there's anything else we need to cover? Let's see. This guy was.
Yeah, the only thing I've always wondered to myself was, we use all these snips and we put them in our family here to trace them. Do
Yep.
you have any problems leaving these snips inside the family?
Yes, you do not want to leave them in the family.
Sometimes it's nice though when I go open up the family again in the future and I'm not sure where this came from and I have the snip right there to see.
I understand that. The problem is they'll load your project up. If you have snips in your families like that, you can
Uh-huh.
easily add 100 meg to your project
Oh, okay.
with
Okay.
only 10 families.
Okay.
Okay. Now, I want to do a little bit of cleanup before I actually send this out. So we had this generic model named Family 2. That's our actual duct connection. So really, it probably would be a good idea if we took this guy and made him be mechanical equipment, loaded him into the project. And what you now see is now this object, when I pick on it, it says it's mechanical equipment. Down here, it says mechanical equipment. And we'd rename this guy to duct connection. And then generally, if this is something that's got instance parameters, I'm going to call this parametric. And you could do these in a dozen different ways. This is just something that I found that it doesn't weigh it down too heavy, yet it lets it be a little bit adjustable, if that makes sense. So now that I've done that, I've got a duct connection. I want to go back to that object, right? And I'm going to go look at this in the front view. I'm going to delete this stupid box. And I'm going to create a revolve. And my revolve is going to look like this. It's going to come up about 3 inches. It's going to come a hair below. They don't really give me a size, so I'm going to guess it's about 4 inches. Come up here, do this, that, and draw my axis line right here. Finish that. And I'm going to push that into the project. Oh, you know what? Before I push it into the project, I want to make that guy be a lighting device or lighting fixture. Load that into the project. Now, if I go to the 3D view and say create component, you'll see that I've got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now, by all means, you really could just eyeball this into location because you're going to find they haven't really given us any dimensions, right? They didn't
Yeah,
dimension where the
that's what I
lights,
do. I always
right?
trace it, so if I don't give dimensions.
Try to make it match and see. Then here, I'm just going to nudge these guys over. But that was a very valid question about, you know, can't you just keep those images in there forever? But you really shouldn't.
It saved me so many times leaving it in there, but I understand.
Yeah, yeah. I totally get where you're coming from.
You have to teach people sometime in this group here how to organize their folders, hopefully nice and clean. I wasn't that great when I started.
Yeah. Now it's down below. So that means that all we got to do now is the step that you didn't want to do, which is delete this image. Now the objective is for Tyler and Ginger and anyone else is to take this guy and make it look you can see when you would get to the next family. Oh, that little square guy. That's just a one little connection in the back. You can see it's the exhaust is a 12 by 12 and a 30 by 12, and it should just be centered. And the rest of everything just sort of squishes down. So you can see that we really would like to have this overall width, right? The overall width and the overall depth. So we'll put those two in there. So this 80, what we really want is this guy to be a parameter. That's the overall width or overall depth. I'm sorry. We don't have this dimension, so we'll put this dimension in down here. And this guy's going to be the overall width. Now you can sort of test this. This is where it's probably a good idea if I go ahead and save this. Oh, I guess before I save it, it'd be a good idea to take it off a generic model and make it the piece of mechanical equipment it is. Do a save as, do a save. Exhaust, hood. I'm just going to name it 1 for right now. I'm just going to take them in that order. But what I want to see is how flexible is this model? So that next one, it said that the width, the overall width, this is another thing I like to do is the big dimensions, my 2 overalls, I generally keep those in the dimension. All these other ones, I'd put all of these guys in the other category. And you'll see how that sort of sorts that. That's why I do it. So now when you look at it, you can see, oh, if we were to dimension, change the dimensions of the back ones, the exhaust to 8 by 16, change the makeup depth to 14 by 38. Let's see how well my connections all did. The connections all look like they survive. Now the overall width and the overall depth, it's probably going to have problems. So let's go up to 400 and we'll make this 100. And you'll see that it didn't do terrible at it. What happened there? These were not locked down, right? So that would mean those would grow better. And on top of that, this dimension didn't do good because this dimension should be equal, right? So ironically, what ends up happening, see if you can see this one, Misty. Generally, what I would do is I would draw an extra reference plane here and then another reference plane right between the two of those. Okay? The reason being is I can say this are all equal. That would keep those all centered, right?
Yeah.
That makes sense?
It does.
So if we create this guy, then like I said, you got 2 extra ones. This one's going to get a little bit crazy because the dimension went all the way down to there. Okay, so the only thing that I didn't do was I didn't lock this. Wait. Skip one. Skip one. You know what that guy is? That was my extrusion cut. And it's just because he wasn't locked down to the reference plane down there. And it's at both ends. This one here should say equal. And that centered everything up. So the only thing I've got bad is that extrusion cut. And remember, I did that from the side. You got an idea what to do there? Because it's a little bit annoying to have to do this one because you can't actually tie it into being a distance from that reference plane. So what it helps to do is actually just create another reference plane right here, a little bit away from there. Let's see. Yeah, there was a line there. And you can see that guy's coming in at 1 inch. I want to make that 0.25 inches. I really want to take that dimension and I want to put a dimension in there and lock that dimension. So I need to do that same thing at the other end. Put another reference plane. .25. Lock that dimension, and all I have to do is take that guy's shape and stretch it. Sometimes you can use the align command, might be easier. Actually, it is definitely going to be easier. Align from there to there and lock. Align from that green line. Where's he at? Right there to there and lock. And I do believe this thing would now be parametric. I believe we could change it back to whatever the heck it was. I think it was like 288. Ooh. What happened with this one?
Get stressed all the way.
Now it won't. I don't think it will. Let's go 300. Somehow that one face is not landing right. Where's it going to? All right. So I need to get from here to there and lock that. Let's see. 350. And it got rid of that constraint. But it works at the other end, huh? I'm going to leave that one as extra credit to see if you can make that thing be adjustable. But understand, for us to do our work, we could still just come in here and say that's 1/4 inch plate at the end. And I'll play to figure out where that was coming in. So now by adjusting this guy, and I'm going to go ahead and take it back to that. So let me look at my PDF. Bear with me. PDF. Yep, that one right there is the one I want. So we can go, the size of this is 336 overall width, 80-inch overall depth. The exhaust depth is 12 by 20. And the makeup bear is 12 by 30. And like I said, other than that one last plate, that one end plate's all that's causing me heartburn. So I'll email that to everyone. But the idea is now I can push this into the project and I can connect to it. There's 9 more of these units. I'd like to think each one of these units is probably worth about $100 per family. Why don't you see if you can make a little money and draw one of these families for me? I sent you the PDF, and I will be sending you this file here. I guess the one last thing I'd want to do is this lighting fixture that's still named Family 2. I just call this light. And then this one here, since it's not really got any parameters, I'd call it typical. Whereas the other one I call it parametric. And that's how we build a family. More importantly, you should be able to take this and use this as the bones. Because we deleted those images out, it's always a good idea to purge. And sometimes that's worthwhile to do multiple times. I'm now going to do the file save as family. This is exhaust hood number 1. Last thing I want to do is compact it. And when I've done that, we should now be looking at this guy here is about 528 meg or 528 KB. You never want this file size of the family to be over 1 meg, or it's going to bloat the size of the project. And that's not what we want to do. So if you can create these exhaust hoods, they don't have to be parametric. You can use the techniques I did to draw them and put the connections on there. You should be able to mimic all of that from what I just did in an hour. And like I said, I'd like to think if you can do this and confirm it and do the whole ball of wax, it should be worth $100. I think if you guys can get very close to it, I think with a little bit of review time, I have no problem paying you to start making these guys. So, Ginger, I'm not sure if you're still there. You should see an email, and I'll send the email to Tyler with a link. You guys be good. We'll see you on Thursday, hopefully. See you, Misty. Thank you for helping me.